It's time once again to go racing.
The pressure is really on now.
And it's pole position.
And it's pedal to the metal. Go, go, go!
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to PSGL for some more top tier PlayStation action. This is season 29 and it is round number 2 at the always colourful, sometimes interesting, especially in league racing, circuit Paul Ricard Le Castellet for the French Grand Prix. My name is Luke Etheridge. Alongside me once again in the commentary box is Mark Alimonda, and if last week's race is anything to go by, Mark, we are in for a cracker this evening.
Bonsoir, mon ami. Indeed, last week's race was absolutely fantastic. A great way to start the season. And now we travel all the way from the Middle East to, one of the traditional heartlands of Formula One, if not traditional track of Formula One, because of course Magny-Cours, famous for hosting the French Grand Prix for a long time. It wasn't since the 80s we'd been to Paul Ricard until we returned in 2018, and until this year the races have been pretty much not very entertaining until 2021, of course. We saw a fantastic race there, strategies playing out. But league racing, on the other hand, Luke, we've seen some absolutely phenomenal races here at France.
Yeah, we have seen some brilliant action in league racing. However, in top tier in PSGL, there tends to be one man who does a pretty decent job around this track, and that is CRG Blizzard. And he started the season in absolutely fantastic form, taking victory last time out at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Started on pole position, did get jumped by VRT Georges on strategy, but he managed to re-overtake him. Had to watch out for CRG Gamer at the end though. Georges finishing third and Gamer finishing second. Was quite an interesting race last week. Some names like Blizzard and Gamer, ones that we expected to be near the top, doing well. Georges perhaps a bit of a surprise, and some of those who did well last season, Midnight and Duncan, Yost for example, seem to struggle, so they'll be wanting to hit the ground running at this race, prove that last week was just a blip.
Yes, I mean, this always happens in the opening round of a season anywhere, really. You always get, the drivers you expect to be up there sort of performing to the best of their ability, but then you get a couple of, odd showings, off days for those who were, in pre-season seen as potential title contenders, such as Duncan, who definitely had a race to forget last week, but he's got the speed to recover from that and hit back tonight. We only have 13 rounds in this particular season, so can't afford many more off days like that, otherwise he could very quickly, such as Duncan, be out of title contention.
Yeah, definitely could get away from him very quickly. You can see we're staying in Europe for quite a while actually. France tonight, Belgium, Netherlands, Italy, Britain, Austria. Then in the second half of the season, where we see some of the tracks abroad, China, Japan, Canada, Mexico, USA and Brazil. A very American feel to the end of the calendar. Bit of information there about tonight's track. One-stop strategy, judging by some of the PC races that we've seen and some of the lower tier races. Almost certainly the one drivers will be going for, but F2 and F3, interestingly, there was a bit of rain. Not something that we obviously see at Bahrain, always something to watch out for tonight, and that could be very interesting if tonight's race gets a bit wet.
Yes, I mean, France Paul Ricard is a very good track for dry racing. Seen some very entertaining races, but can be a mixed bag in the wet because it does seem to nullify the field. It's very difficult to overtake in the wet at this track, just because of the nature of the full throttle sections. It's just very difficult to sort of get the car under control, into a position to overtake the car in front, who has all the advantages often of a clearer track ahead and sort of judging the line first. So I think personally, I think the drivers will be wanting a dry race, but if it's a wet race, that could certainly mix up the top 10.
Yeah, definitely. Thing is with the wet race as well, no DRS around this circuit. Quite often, where you see a lot of the overtakes being done, there are 2 DRS zones. One halfway down the Mistral straight into the chicane into turn 8, and one on the main pit straight into turn 1, but quite a high speed first chicane where you don't really see too much overtaking. And this track, you can see why it's used as such a good test track. Sector 1 has some quite slow, twisty sections, for example, turns 3, 4, and 5. Then you've got Sector 2, all really about straight line speed. And then that final sector, downforce is key, and keeping your tyres in good shape and at a good temperature, so important.
Absolutely. It's a funny circuit, really. In some ways, it's not that far off Bahrain in terms of how you have to set up the track. You know, you've got the Mistral straight, an absolutely gigantic straight. I mean, without the chicane, it would probably be one of the longest flatted out sections in Formula 1. So you have to set up the car for sort of lower downforce, otherwise you're an absolute sitting duck in the first of those DRS zones, I should say. But then you still need a little bit of balance to the car for Sector 3, because, you know, often, because of the nature of Sector 1 and Sector 2, Luke, the sort of ability of the driver in Sector 3 to sort of keep the tyres alive to the end of the lap, to sort of be very careful on the throttle, particularly out of turns 12 and 15 in Sector 3, can make the difference in these tight grids between, you know, being in the lower order to the top 10 and being on the front row.
Yeah, definitely, especially on this game, reduced rear downforce. We saw plenty of drivers having trouble keeping it facing the right direction early on in qualifying in Bahrain. It was Christmas who lost it coming out of turn 7, losing it on that curb at Bahrain, as we have seen so many other drivers do over the years in PSGL and in other league racing as well. What will tonight's qualifying session have in hold for all of these drivers? Thankfully, we won't have long to go to find out. Qualifying is just getting underway, and thankfully for everyone, it is dry now, but F2 and F3 did see some rain in the race, so that is going to be one to look for later. And just sneaking a look at the TAS, looks like we're going to see rain towards the second half of this race as well. That could change the setups.
Wow, that's certainly going to throw the cat among the pigeons there. That's going to answer a lot of questions among the teams, especially the more established CRG, VSR, and VRT teams. They're going to be discussing among themselves what sort of strategies to go for. Of course, if we are going to get rain in the race at all, then that's going to make the qualifying situation very simple for them, Luke. They're going to be all going for soft running in qualifying. There's not going to be any question, really, of any alternate strategy attempts during this session.
No, it might just make things a bit more difficult in terms of seeing that in the first stage of the race, drivers waiting for the strategy. They're going to wait for the rain to come, and just calling it right could be the key. We have actually got a couple of drivers heading out on track on a set of the medium tyres. Suso, who took part last week, is one of them. We've also got making his debut in this season as a reserve driver, VSR Jordan, going in place of last week's runner-up CRG Gamer. So he's now taking to the circuit. We've also got Fede taking place of M-Short in the Alpine. M-Short, you might remember, had such a fantastic start to last week's race, and it all just seemed to fall apart for him at the end, perhaps just losing it on the tyre. So maybe he won't be too upset to be missing tonight's race, as Jordan's wiping out one of the many bollards that are used to try and help with the track limits around this circuit. You will see quite a high number of penalties, and Jordan just heading into the pits. Perhaps doing similar to what we saw last week and what we see the drivers do on the PC with the intermediate tyres, just checking that all your setup is working correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really an approach I personally went for myself. I would usually just sit back and relax in the garage and just watch what other people were doing, just seeing what kind of lines they were taking, just as a sort of useful reference. I mean, obviously these guys are way quicker than anything I've ever managed, but I personally never saw the value of going on a very green track, unless it was just a waste of set of tyres you were not going to have to use later on. So hopefully, especially in the case of the Inter tyres, which we see particularly on the PC tier, they're not going to be using that again in that sort of session. But I think as the track evolves, I think sort of 18-minute session, I think coming out sort of 14 minutes onwards is usually, at least for me personally, the time to come out.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, being quite a lengthy circuit compared to some on the game, you won't get too many chances to get a good lap in. Let's see if Midnight can start off well then on his run down towards the first corner where Bottas and Vettel came together in the first race we had at Paul Ricard since its return in 2018. Not taking a lot of curb there through turn 2, so just trying to keep it nice and safe for now, heading downhill into 3, 4, and 5. You need to go a bit slower through 4 just to make sure you get that optimum racing line into turn 5. The game can be quite forgiving at track limits at this part of the circuit. You're coming through 6, feathering the throttle, getting the best possible one through 7. DRS open on the back of that Alpha Tauri, then heading down the Mistral straight. No slipstreaming allowed, remember, in qualifying in PSGL, so can't get any help off of your teammates. Midnight looking very nice and tidy so far into the Mistral chicane. Crucial to get a good exit through here, especially in the race, because this next fast corner does definitely provide some opportunities for overtaking if you get a good one out of it into turn 10. Nice and flat through there, straightforward. In a modern Formula 1 car, this is where it starts to get a bit more tricky in this final sector. Almost a double apex right-hander at turn 11. Drivers tend to take a very late apex through there into turn 12 now. This is where the tyres really start to feel it. Around the Paul Ricard circuit, you ride the curb as much as possible. Hug it like your favourite granny, as Martin Brundle would say. Coming into turn 14 now, exiting through turn 15. Thankfully, the pit entry was moved. In 2018, that did used to make things quite a bit more difficult around here than they would otherwise need to be. And Midnight heads towards the line. 127.259 puts him just behind Will LG. Very respectable first runs indeed, considering pole in F2 was only a 127.1, already within a tenth of that in the case of Will.
Well, in Will LG's case, they celebrated long into the night at Bahrain last week after getting his first ever points in the top tier. And yes, you say a very respectable banker lap. I watched Blizzard's opening run. He invalidated. He had a really good Sector 1, one of the fastest Sector 1s of anyone, but he invalidated in Sector 2. So he's going again, I believe. Not sure. Oh no, has he come back to the pits? Yeah, I think he is going again actually. So I think they might be fueling up a little bit more. Slightly slower this time, but still a purple Sector 1 for Blizzard. So this time he's got to try and not get it wrong. I believe he invalidated at the chicane in Sector 2 on the Mistral straight. I think that's where he invalidated last time. Let's see what we can do this time. Looking for the markable inside, taking the max curbs again. Yeah, really aggressive on the curbs there, attacking them. Full throttle. Out of the corner, no wheel spin. That was pretty much perfect. Not a purple Sector 2 though, slightly slower than what Will LG managed for his earlier banker time. But this is looking like a very competitive time from Blizzard so far. I think this will more than likely look at least the front row.
Yeah, definitely. Will be no surprise whatsoever with that. He's going for a second pole position in Israel. Got his 15th win in PSGL history last time out in I think it's about 110 races.
Oh, he's
now.
out of fuel.
Yeah,
he's out of fuel.
He's gone very slow through that corner, and yeah, just ran out of fuel. Shame for him, because that was looking like a really good lap. Still early days yet, still plenty of time. 12 minutes to go, 2/3 of a session to get another run in, but you do at least wanted to get a solid time on the board.
Yeah, I think he was obviously practicing on his on the in lap there, but getting a bit of a reference. I think that entry he had for Sector 2, I think he would have learned his mistake from that early invalidation. Yeah, Christmas up there. Christmas had a a very interesting race last week. He had a good qualifying. No, actually, he didn't have a good qualifying. He crashed out, what am I saying? And then he had a really action-packed race in the midfield, then unfortunately had to retire. So Christmas, you know, he's got very good speed, as we've seen early on in the session in P3, but he'll be hoping for, you know, a slightly less eventful race, shall we say.
Yeah, well, indeed, and I don't know whether Xander was going for a second hot lap there, but Shizuo Giano sort of came out in the pits in front of him. Don't know whether there's any communication going on between them, but it is an awkward pit exit here. We talked about the pit entry early on where we were following around Midnight on a hot lap. You've got to be careful with that pit exit as well. It pretty much throws you out into the racing line.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a pretty insane pit exit. I think in other formulas it doesn't matter so much because they're not going so fast. I mean, Formula 1, the speeds they're going with these modern cars, can be quite terrifying seeing a car going on the racing line where the pit exit is. But, you know, these drivers, they know what they're doing. I think they'll be pretty aware of what's going on around them. So hopefully we don't get any incidents because of that.
Yeah, hopefully everyone does behave themselves. There were a few stewards' decisions last time out. Gamer got a warning for a collision with Duncan, which I think is what led to Duncan's damage and why he had such a difficult race in the end. Jack Eater also got a warning for a collision with you. So VSL drivers finding themselves in the walls a bit there. And the only one with a penalty was Shizuo Ogiano with a collision with Asakomi. He's got a 5-second penalty that will be applied after this race. So wherever he finishes today, he will get 5 seconds added on to his time. We've got Mish, I think one of the few drivers who's actually on a hot lap at the moment, just coming through sector number 1 now and coming now onto that Mistral straight. Mish last time out, pretty respectable performance indeed. I think he'll be happy with that. 5th position was sort of just off the back of that leading group. He started well last season. He'll be hoping that he can carry the form on into this French Grand Prix.
Yes, I think he had a very, very respectable race last week. He came from outside the top 10. I think he, by the looks of what he was doing qualifying, I think he was trying to get that P11 spot. Didn't quite work out, but he had a really storming display to get into that top 5 position. And he was Aston Martin's obviously best runner last time out, and he has solid speed. And so far, he's not really set a representative lap, so we're not really seeing his best time so far. Looking at his sector times now, though, he seems to be not far off the pace of the front runners. So he's just running the final corner now, that very awkward final corner. Heading to the line now. What's it going to be for Michi? It's going to be P7 for now. So just over 2.5 tenths to Will LG's time, which still stands as the best time with just over 8 minutes of the session to go.
Yeah, that time from Will standing for test of time at the moment. 8 minutes to go, 10 minutes gone in this session. OP Fusilio heading towards the finish line now. Another driver who put in a fantastic debut performance last time around. He takes 9th place off of Mishen on a 128.0. A massive gap, especially even in real racing terms, never mind league racing terms. Half a tenth of a second between the top 8 drivers and only the remaining 4 that have set a time. There's a few that are leaving this quite late, and it looks like both of the Red Bull drivers might even be thinking about going for the medium tyres, perhaps taking a bit of a gamble with when the rain is going to come in this race. But let's go on board then with the championship leader. Perhaps no surprising, he's purple in the first sector.
Yeah, I mean, he invalidated here last time. Let's see what he does this time. Yeah, again, attacking those curbs with fury behind the steering wheel. He's got to get it right this time because there's not many more opportunities for him to get this right. He's got plenty of fuel this time. He's not going to run out. Purple in sector 2 for Blizzard. Now he flies through this fantastic. This is one of the best parts of the track. Full throttle, right-hander, then braking as lazy there, trying not to drift too wide, then getting the apex on the right. Not taking too much curb on the left, and this is looking beautiful so far. Takes a wider line so he can get the narrow line on the exit. Doesn't want to go too wide out of that because he can envisage validation. I mean, he's right on the wide lines. I mean, he is abusing the hell out of this track. I mean, we know the runoff areas here are considerable. Getting on low fuel now, right around the final corner, and this is looking like a very fast time for the championship leader. I think this is going to be provisional pole for Blizzard, and it is a 26.939 into the 26s. He has, in a very small margin in terms of real time, but he has absolutely smashed LG's time for the time being. It's going to be difficult for any of the other drivers to respond to that, but we've still got plenty of time and plenty of track evolution to come, and Blizzard himself can definitely go faster than this.
Yeah, his teammate is actually going faster. Definitely in Sector 1. They're pretty even in Sector 2. So Midnight might be able to challenge his teammate here. You would expect at least an AlphaTauri 1-2 by the time Midnight gets across the line in about 5 seconds time. So here he is for Thai driver. Took some good performances towards the end of last season. Midnight crosses the line. 126.985. Less than half a tenth behind his teammate AlphaTauri. Looking in very good form at this moment in time. Fastest in Sector 1. And in Sector 3 was Midnight. It was just that middle sector. Blizzard perhaps with a bit more oomph and a bit less drag in his AlphaTauri, and that is the difference at the moment between starting on pole and starting down in second place. Hughes going for a run on the medium tyres. We said we perhaps wouldn't expect to see this. Surely this is taking a bit of a gamble and thinking, right, can I get to the rain starting on a set of medium tyres and just hope that those on the softs have to come in, because it is a fairly long pit lane here.
Yeah, I mean that's it's almost worth the gamble. I mean, if they believe the rain's going to come a little bit later, then yeah, this could work out beautifully for them. Problem is, being on the mediums, they're going to be starting quite far down the grid. So, if they start outside the top 10, they're going to get free tire choice anyway. So, almost be worth trying to get as close to the back end of the top 10 as they can, which they may not be able to do on these mediums, but. Juice about to cross the line now. This will give us an idea of what the sort of relative pace of the mediums is in comparison. And it's P11. So I think for Juice, that would be an absolute dream if he finished there, if he's trying to think about the alternate strategy.
Yeah, he'd love to finish there, but I think there's going to be a few drivers with a bit to say about that. His teammate Xander might be one of those. Reigning F2 champion had a bit of a collision actually last week with Casper. Got a podium last year at this circuit, so it's definitely one he enjoys. Xander comes across the line, can only get into 13th, 4 tenths behind his teammate, and they are the only two to have set their best laps on the medium tyres at this moment in time. 4 minutes, 20 seconds to go though. Still Blizzard and Midnight, your top two. Jordan getting himself up into 3rd place as a reserve driver, and Will's first time still good enough to get him into 4th. Casper, Ogiano and Jack Eater yet to set a lap time, so they're leaving it very late indeed, and just shows with how many invalidations we've seen compared to last week how difficult the track limits are around here. If there's a late safety car, which with all the runoff area you wouldn't expect there to be a late safety car, but if there is, penalties could be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, this circuit's not generally a circuit really known for that many time penalties, which is kind of expected given the massive runoff areas. I mean, the danger zones for time penalties are, the opening chicane right at the start of the lap, and of course, the high speeds you take into the chicane on the Mistral straight. But apart from that, unless you've made a genuine mistake and run out wide, it should be a track with, if you're disciplined enough, you shouldn't get time penalties here, especially at this top tier. Just analysing sort of the sector times, there is hardly anything between the top 6 in terms of sector 1. All but one in the 21 freeze. And then the difference in terms of the couple of tenths seems to be being made in sector 2, particularly for those 4th to 6th. That's where the time they've got to try and find more. That's where it will make the difference for them. Because at the moment, their Sector 1 and Sector 3s are very close to the top 3, but then they fall away a little bit in Sector 2. So if they can find a little bit more time there, Luke, then they'll be able to challenge for those front row positions.
Yeah, definitely. Just looking at, for example, Christmas is Sector 1's off by a tiny bit. Sector 2, he seems to be struggling, but he's actually quicker than Will in the final sector. We've also got Danirko. He's a bit off in the final sector as well, which is the longest sector of the lap. So it's perhaps not surprising when we're talking just under 39 seconds for the final sector on a lap which is 87 seconds long. That is where you're seeing some of the differences. But yeah, downforce especially, that's pretty much all it's going to be with identical cars in that middle sector. That is causing the differences. So it's always a gamble with the weather. The drivers do get to see the weather at different stages of the race. They're never quite sure though what it's going to be like and when exactly the rain is coming. It always seems to predict it to come a bit later than it actually does. We are into the final running though of this session. Back on board with Mish in the Aston Martin straight away. Invalidates coming out of turn 1. Hopefully for his sake, he's got enough fuel to get another run in. Will LG is, though, he's on a hot lap now and he's actually set a personal best in the first sector. Only 16 thousandths up on his personal best, and about the same as what we saw Blizzard does. And oh, that's a big slide coming through the Mistral chicane. That's definitely going to cost him chunks of time because you're flat out now all the way to turn 11.
Yeah, he's nearly 4 tenths down on his personal best time thanks to that mistake there. So he might have enough fuel. Both Alpha Tauris very close to each other on track at the moment. I don't know if they're thinking about slipstream or something like that. Looks like Midnight's going to get the run first. Blizzard has dropped back a little bit to get as far back as possible. So yeah, the Alpha Tauris on the attack, looking to seal off this front row of the field. And Jordan on his outer lap, so he's going to be trying to respond. Just seeing if anyone else there. Well, Michi seemingly does have enough fuel to go again. He's backed off massively, of course, after that invalidation. And yeah, haven't seen much from the McLaren so far. Suso and Ismix, I'd expect Suso especially to be a bit higher up the field. But yeah, so far it's been a very quiet session for them. So keep an eye out for them later on. But Will LG has retired in the pit, so his session is over. So 4th will be the best for him. But let's watch the two AlphaTauri drivers because they are likely, along with Jordan, going to be the ones competing for pole right here, right now.
Yeah, most certainly. I think, this is a circuit he's got good history at. Had a fantastic...
Oh, Midnight. He invalidated.
Midnight's invalidated his lap. Blizzard is actually, I think, slightly slower at the moment in the first 2 sectors. So we're not seeing lots of improvements from these drivers. Unless Blizzard comes up with something magical in the final sector, he's not going to extend his pole position. But is anyone able to challenge him? Jordan and Christmas are improving further back. Isma's just got up into that magical 11th place. Checkered flag is out. Used retires from the session in the pit, so 12th is the best he's going to do, but he's going to get that fresh choice of tyres. Now, can Blizzard find anything in the final sector to try and get an improvement, try and just secure this pole position? It'll be a second run in a row this season. Blizzard heads towards the finish line. Is it good enough? Yes, it is. 5,000ths of a second quicker. And there we go. Blizzard just finds a tiny bit more time. Christmas has improved in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Doesn't look like it's going to be enough to challenge for, well, I say that, he's actually very close to the time that Blizzard has done for pole position. So this could definitely get an Aston Martin in the meat in the AlphaTauri sandwich at the moment. Can Christmas manage to sneak his way into the 126ers? Not quite. 127.041. Good enough for third place for now. Jordan, though, he improved in Sector 1, lost a bit of time in the second sector. Asakomi in 11th at the moment. Duncan 12th. Mees goes up into 10th position. Jordan, the reserve in the Williams, lost a lot of time in the final sector. 4th is the best he can do. Jack Eater jumps ahead of his teammate into 15th place. We've got his teammate just heading towards the line. Casper goes 17th on the medium. Xander 18th. Not too fussed, I don't think, about setting a better time. Fusilio goes up into 10th place. I think Misha will be very grateful for the fact that he got knocked down into 11th. George has got a podium. Last time out, he has invalidated his lap. And a qualifying, to paraphrase Gary Lineker, French Grand Prix is a simple qualifying session. 20 drivers go around for 18 minutes, and at the end, Blizzard takes pole position.
Absolutely. I mean, were we expecting that? Jordan was going very fast in the first two sectors, but yeah, literally after the getting through the timestamp for Sector 2, it just kind of fell apart for him a little bit. So wasn't able to challenge in the end. A really good session for Christmas, but yeah, no one could quite challenge the AlphaTauris. They seem to have a really good pace here today.
Yeah, they do, and they're showing that at the moment, leading the Constructors' Championship, thanks purely to Blizzard's win last time out, and this time he's got his teammate alongside him on the front row. Christmas, a much better qualifying in third. Jordan, great job as a reserve in fourth. Will is fifth. Danirko 6th. Shizuo Giano is 7th. Fede in 8th. George is a Fusilo. Rounding up the top 10, Miche will have a free choice of tyres in 11th, as well Asakomi. Suso and Duncan round out the 7th row of the grid. Ismix is 15th. Yost down in 16th. Jaquita 17th. Casper 18th. He set his best time on the mediums, as did Xander, who is the 19th and final runner. So not many drivers going for that medium strategy. It's pretty obvious which ones the AlphaTauris are going for. Control the race from the front, and we'll see if there's any teamwork going on between them here, because Midnight could definitely help Blizzard get away a bit before those softs start to wear.
Well, I'm not sure about how much teamwork there's going to be, at least in the second round of the season, because Midnight, he retired last week. Awful start to the season for him. So he'll be wanting to get, some really solid points on the board. And, the best way to do that would be to win today. So I don't think he's one of the quickest in the league, in my opinion, Midnight. I don't think he can afford to sort of play the number 2 to Blizzard at such an early stage. I think he's got to go for it, in a safe way, not to risk the, both of them crashing out. But, I think he's got to try and be aggressive against Blizzard. Otherwise, it's going to send a psychological signal to Blizzard that, yeah, I am the number 1 driver of this team.
Yeah, of course, Blizzard could always do what he did last week, where he got an absolutely fantastic start. Helped, in fact, by M-Shot getting a good start and struggling a bit, and it was like Sebastian Vettel-esque in his Red Bull days. After the first couple of laps, Blizzard was already well outside of DRS range, and there was not a lot everyone else could do to catch him, other than try something out on the strategies. And we've already seen, with the fact that there is going to be some rain in this race, strategies could well play the key to how this race goes around the Circuit Paul Ricard. First used in Formula 1 in 1971, over 160 different configurations around this circuit, and the one Formula 1 use is one of the longest. 15 corners, 3.63 miles, 2 DRS zones on the run down into turn 1 and the run down into turn 8, and those are the tyres everyone has gone for. Top 10 obviously when you're on the softs. No softs outside the top 10, as Blizzard sends one of the bollards flying before the race has even got underway. Duncan, Isma and Casper, though, they're hoping the rain doesn't come until very late on in the race. They're going for the hards.
Yes, I mean, it's very much in the rain gods where these strategies are going to play out. Those in the top 10, they'll be trying to get the softs as far into the race as possible. Realistically, though, the most you can get them without them completely falling apart and losing massive time. It's going to be sort of within between lap 9 to 12. So that's the window for them not to have to do an extra stop before the rain comes. Then the medium runners, of course, that's going to be a big chunk of the race for them. They're not going to be having to pit for those until probably at least the end of lap 17, but they can probably push them to 20 if they really need to. And then the hards can probably go the entire length of the race. So the ball is in the court of the hard runners for sure. But Blizzard, you know, phenomenal record here. You mentioned that this track's only been back on the F1 canvas in 2018. Blizzard has had 6 podiums here, 4 of them wins since the F1 2018 game. It is by far his best track, and if he wins tonight, he will equal the all-time PlayStation PS F1 record of most wins at one circuit, which is currently held by Big C, who won 5 times at Australia and Britain respectively.
Yeah, that is a fantastic record, especially given how little, like you said, this has been on the game. It's only the 4th game that we've seen the Paul Ricard circuit, and if we see a win tonight, and we see it again later on in the seasons, in 29 or 30, we wouldn't be too surprised if Blizzard takes that solo record. But he's got 27 laps to negotiate and rain to negotiate as well. Expected sometime in between 15 and 30 minutes, so they'll get at least about 10 laps into this race. Might get heading towards 20 laps before we start seeing that rain coming down. Xander just waiting for him to get into position on the grid, and the red lights will come on, and we'll be able to get this race underway. 4 lights, 5 lights on here at Paul Ricard. And we're underway for the French Grand Prix. Seems like another decent start from Blizzard again. Should be able to cover off his teammate into turn 1. Crispus getting very close with Jordan in the background. Is the Williams going to be able to try and move all the way around the outside? Not in the end, so with no change in the front 4. Blizzard, Midnight, Crispus, Jordan. Everyone looks to have got through the first chicane cleanly. No real battles going on at the front of the field. Georgia's Lebanese driver trying to make some moves to get onto the back of his teammate. He's now up into 9th position. We see Jordan again getting very close to the back of Crispus. Those on the hard tyre, you've seen Duncan battling with Jack Eater as well. But no change in the front few drivers. Blizzard still leading this race, and as for slipstreaming begins, Dan Irko's managed to get ahead of Will LG, and Fede getting ahead of Shizu Odiano as well. And Georgia's very close to the back of his teammate in the Alfa Romeo, so perhaps the Italian driver just getting a bit offline in the early stages and then struggling to recover from that situation. Very tidy first lap though. You do see collisions here sometimes on the run down into turn 1, and again an ideal start for Blizzard. Wasn't really challenged by his teammate, and if he needs to, he's got Midnight there just for that little tiny extra bit of protection, as I thought for a second there Will was going to chuck one down the inside of turn 11 on Danirko.
Yeah, it's been a real struggle for those on the hards in the opening stages of the race. I mean, both Duncan and Casper have dropped positions, and Duncan and Jaquita in particular have had a mighty battle on the first lap. They almost came to blows on the exit onto the Mistral straight. Duncan was forced off the road to the right, but luckily was able to keep control of the car. So for now, Jaquita's dropped back behind Duncan, so that's all settling for the time being, as Casper now tries to go alongside the reigning F2 champion Xander right at the back of the field. But this is not where they want to be for the time being. So it seems like to me the hards are, you know, they're not the tire to start on. They're just going to pray that it will go in their favour in terms of the rain later on.
Yeah, I mean, AWS predicting lap 12 to lap 15 for drivers coming into pit off the medium tyres. So they'll be hoping that we don't see rain. Those on the hards hoping we get to at least maybe lap 20 before we start getting some rain. The 2 Alpha Tauris have got a bit of a gap here over Christmas, so I don't know if he's made a slight mistake, but he has dropped more than a second behind. DRS will be activated next time around. First time they'll be able to use it is down that Mistral straight towards turn number 8, but already perhaps coming under a bit of pressure is the Aston Martin driver as he tries to get his first points of the season. Further back, Eust has managed to get ahead of, well, I say he's got ahead of Asakomi. They're pretty much side by side on the run down towards turn 10. Is either one of these going to yield? This is going to be very close between them. Can Eust just about manage to go all the way around the outside into turn 11? Great respect between the two of them. Eust has got himself into 12th position.
Yeah, that was a really, really strong racing from those two. Just about left each other enough room to get through that fast right-hander without massive contact. So that's good stuff from Juice and Asakome there. But for a P12 at the moment, further down the field, as you mentioned, Christmas struggling a little bit to keep up with the the mighty pace of the AlphaTauris at the moment, just outside DRS range. So that's now been activated by race control. So Christmas is very important, and he is having a very good Sector 1 so far. He's now got back within DRS range of Midnight. It's almost like Midnight's being slowed down a little bit by Blizzard. So Midnight seems to have a little bit more pace than Blizzard at the moment, but he is using a little bit more ERS than Blizzard at the moment, particularly in those high-speed sections. So we'll see if and he's gone. Christmas is gone. Went on the power. Oh, and that's just a simple unforced error there from Christmas, and that has really opened it up for the AlphaTauris, because now Jordan is 1.4 behind, and is now elevated to third place. But yeah, that is an awful moment for Christmas. In a way, Luke, a very similar mistake to the one at Bahrain, except he didn't take as much curb, but the way he sort of spun up the wheels of the car, that was that. I mean, luckily, because this track has such gigantic runoff areas, he didn't damage the car at all, so he's able to recover it. So he might think about considering maybe making an early stop for one of the harder compounds and trying to last to the rain.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw Casper do something similar at America in the first social race, or one of the first social races on the PS. This game really seems to struggle a bit. When you put the ERS onto the overtake, it is very easy to spin the wheels and get things wrong, and we are seeing some extremely early pit stops here from both of the OP team drivers. We've got Fede and Fusilo coming into the pits off a set of soft tyres, so I don't know whether these two are talking at all or communicating. Medium tyres going on for them. That's their suggestion of when they think the rain is going to come. But yeah, that is we expect early pit stops at Paul Ricard. That perhaps a bit early at the end of lap 3.
Yeah, and while that was happening, Midnight attacked Blizzard and took the lead of the race on the start of lap 4 into turn 1, and that's allowed Jordan to close the gap. So this is a three-way fight for lead as well. Blizzard, is he going to try and come back at his teammate? He's got the slipstream, he's got the DRS, he's got the overspeed. He's going to go down the inside of the Mistral chicane and retakes the lead. So the lead has changed hands in less than 2 seconds, twice in 1 lap. So they are not holding anything back at the moment.
No, and all they're doing is perhaps holding each other up. As you say, it's allowed Jordan to get really close. We've seen Will get back ahead of Danny Irko, so we've got AlphaTauri 1-2, Williams 3-4 at the moment, but of course Jordan as a reserve will not score any points for the Williams team, and Blizzard just perhaps showing his experience there, maybe showing a bit of authority as well, knowing that just let the move happen into turn 1 and then I'll just get you back into turn 8 onto the second DRS zone. But any one of these drivers goes for the undercut, that could really cause some issues for them. We've seen some more pit stops coming into the pits now. Shizuo Giano coming in off his soft tyres. I presume that is going to be for mediums. That seems to be the way at the moment. Lead car on the mediums is now me. She's a 1.2 seconds off the back of George's. He's got Used on the back of them. Asakome, Suso, Ismo and Duncan not too far back either. These just off the back of those soft tyre runners at this moment in time.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on the lap times of the early stoppers from the softs to the mediums just to see how they compare to the race leaders. So obviously they've just, particularly in the case of the 2 OP drivers, they've just started their first lap in anger on those medium tyres. So we'll get a direct comparison soon. Midnight then, once again, having maybe half a look at Blizzard, but not quite close enough, and that's allowed Jordan to get even closer. But that's going to drag Will and Danny into this battle as well, with VRT Georges in P6 not too far behind either.
No, he's, I think for the first time in a while, got himself within that magical 1 second point. Yost was able to get ahead of Mish as well, so he's now up into 7th place as he looks to get his first points of this season. Can Georges get onto the back of these guys? And, well, now that they've got into a bit of a longer battle, that might just help Blizzard out ever so slightly, because Midnight perhaps knows now that he can't afford to go for a bit more of a risky move, because that might allow Jordan and perhaps even Will, Danirko and Georges make the move.
Yeah, I think, you know, they had that sort of exchange of position for the lead earlier on, but I'm not sure if this was the right time to be battling like that, because it's costing them time and it's pulling more drivers into this. And I have to admit, I am starting to see some clouds gathering on the sort of far north side of the track. That seems to be where it's coming from. Just a few telltale signs, some clouds, so maybe we are going to get some rain within the next few laps. It's still quite bright out there at the moment, but as we know, with these games, the rain can suddenly come in, and you can see the clouds on your screen, I'm sure, Luke, as it looks like Christmas has spun again, unfortunately. Yeah, he has in Sector 1. So it's very tantalizing at the moment, but I think if the rain doesn't come in the next 5 laps, and the OP drivers who pitted earlier have done the right thing, getting rid of those softs so early. However, if the rain comes sooner than that, then it's a massive own goal, because everyone's going to be pitting at more or less the same time, and they've just put themselves at the back of the grid.
Yeah, definitely. Hearing from Elting, who I imagine is engineering Georges tonight then, both for the VRT stable. He said rain in 4 laps. So around about lap 9, lap 10, we might start seeing the rain coming down. Will it be heavy enough then to warrant a change to the intermediate tyres straight away? Or are these drivers going to have to somehow stretch these softs that little bit further? Asakoma's managed to get ahead of Mishi, who I think must have made a... not sure if he's actually disconnected, because he does seem to be dropping down the order. As there goes Midnight into the pit. Will LG following as well. So that releases Blizzard obviously now on his own. Now it's got a bit of a gap back to Jordan. And what tyres are we going to see those drivers come in for? I think Crispus has had a spin. Once again, he is really struggling at this moment in time. And it is a set of hard tyres going on Midnight's car. Now, if we're going to have rain in the next 3 laps now, you wouldn't expect to see the hard tyres coming on unless it's not going to rain that hard.
Well, that's a very intriguing position. Oh, here come the OP drivers. They have undercut Midnight. One of them has. Vedder's undercutting with the medium, so Midnight's going to have to try and re-pass him, but he's got Ogiano, who's also been undercutting on those mediums, right behind him as well. So OP has potentially put himself, if more drivers pit ahead of him, of course, into a position potentially for a net P2, but of course there's plenty of drivers who are on the mediums and hards ahead of him from the start. So he's sort of the leader of the group of those who have pitted legitimately so far. Not sure about Mitchie. I think he might have disconnected because, yeah, his car's ghosting and he's just going a lot slower. So, yeah, I think unfortunately... here comes Midnight. Easy DRS overtake to retake OP Fede. So that was a nice overtake. Would have cost him a little bit of time. Whether that makes any difference, I'm not sure. Going to be interesting to see, Luke, what Blizzard chooses to do. And he does choose to pit.
Yeah, so Blizzard coming into the pits then on this lap, and I think Jordan following in, going way too fast into the pit lane. That's a very costly 5-second penalty for him, although he was coming in that fast. He probably gained one of them pretty much instantly. Daneko in as well, so George is in the lead of this race for a split second though, because Yost down the inside on those medium tyres, and VSR Yost, runner-up in the championship in season 27, third last year, takes the lead of this race as he looks to get those first points. Now, where's Blizzard going to come out?
It's going to be close. It's going to be so close. Blizzard's just exiting, and yeah, what a brilliant in-lap by Blizzard. He's managed to keep ahead of Midnight there. So the undercut for Midnight might have worked actually if he'd gone onto the mediums instead. He had to, of course, get back ahead of the OP drive who briefly overtook him when he came out, and that may have cost him right there. Hards just doesn't seem like the right call at this stage. In terms of if he wanted to get ahead of Blizzard, but you know, maybe they know something we don't. Maybe this rain is going to come a lot later than we thought. Perhaps it's not the 4 laps that Eltink mentioned, but that is still going to play into the hands of the likes of Duncan, Casper, who are happy on sides as Will retires from the race.
Yeah, I think he's lost it coming out of, is that turn 7? You're pretty much flat out at that point of the circuit. Is he? Well, his car's still moving. Yeah,
I wonder if he's had some sort of wheel issue where he's had to pull off, because yeah, I don't know if I didn't see what happened to him, to be honest, but yeah, he definitely didn't crash into the wall and retire straight up because his car, as you say, was still moving. So, and he didn't retire in the pits either because the car wouldn't have gone that far into the lap. So yeah, very strange. I'd like to find out what happened to Will there, because he was running a very fine P4 early on in the race before he had to pit. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. So that's been a pretty awful lap for the 2 Williams boys, with him going out and Jordan getting that time penalty in the pit lane.
Yeah, just got confirmation that Mish has actually disconnected from the session. He is trying to get back in, but I don't think he has a spare invite, so a bit of a nightmare for him at the moment. In the lead though, Yost just proving how good those medium tyres are now compared to the soft tyres. 1.7 seconds ahead of Georges, who is a bit of a sitting duck fairly up down this straight. Apparently Will's done the same as what Christmas did, so it says that is just maybe a bit of an accident and getting some damage to the car and the game a bit slow, retiring that car. Asakomi not able to get on the back of George's this time and managing to get that overtake done. Bit of wheel spin though coming out of turn number 9, and this could be the chance for the Ferrari down the inside with a fast right-hander. And that was fairly straightforward in the end. The Alfa Romeo not with the grip at the moment to hang on to that position. Surely he's got to come in this lap, otherwise it's going to start being a risk of puncture sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we mentioned during qualifying that the window for these soft tyres lasting was between, lap 9 to 11 before they completely fall off the cliff or even puncture. So, yeah, George is on the verge of it, and yeah, he decides to pit. Blizzard has Midnight, Fede and Ogiana right behind him, leading a gaggle of cars, sort of those who have pitted. George's, I'm afraid, is going to be probably at the back of this group, apart from Fusilo maybe, because he has gone that much longer. He will have fresher tyres later on. But yeah, I think the 4 laps of the rain, that's not going to happen. There are definitely clouds in the air. It's definitely not as bright sunshine as it was earlier, but it's taking a little bit longer than what we saw in F2 earlier on. So at the moment, I think Duncan and Casper in particular, and MX for FER, are sitting very pretty right now. They're in a beautiful position where if the rain comes, say, lap 20, that may even put them beyond the likes of Juta, Asakome and Suzo, getting their tyres that long. So they may have played an absolute blinder down at Mercedes and McLaren for those 3 in particular.
Yeah, definitely. It might be just a tactic that gets them towards the front of this race. As you said, Mark, Georges has come out right at the back of this pack as Midnight just pulls out of a slipstream ever so slightly, perhaps cooling the engine, cooling the tyres, cooling the brakes. Don't want things to get too hot at this point in the race. They are planning to go quite a long way on those hard tyres. We're hearing again rain in 4 laps. It'll come when it comes. We would have expected it between lap 10 and 20, and it definitely looks, at the moment, judging by the sky, as we are on board with the Alpine or Fede, that it is going to be towards the end of that window, perhaps not towards the front of it. Jordan with that 5-second penalty, and as you said, they've kept it quite clean. They've only driver with a penalty at the moment, and that of course was for speeding in the pit lane. I'll just give you a quick check of what the warning situation is for some of these drivers that we're looking at. Blizzard and Midnight both with 2 warnings, so they've got to be careful in this train. At the front of this race though, Hughes has only got 1 warning, and he's just looking very good at the moment, but this is starting the point where he's thinking, I'd like these clouds to just get that little bit darker and look that little bit more threatening.
Yeah, but at the moment it's pretty pleasant in the French countryside at the moment. In terms of the lap times of the, let's say, Blizzard 9th down, because they're the ones who have all pitted compared to the top 7. Top 8, I should say. They're lapping about between 5 to 7 tenths a lap quicker than those ahead of them. So, but there's still a fair gap, as you've definitely jinxed him, because Georges has picked up the first on-track time penalty of the evening.
Yeah, if I could somehow find a way to market that and sell it as a tangible skill, definitely commentators cursing would be one of them. So that is Georges with the first penalty. On board with Isma here now. Suso, his teammate ahead of him, with a lot less ERS. You can see that red light flashing on the back of the lead McLaren, whereas Isma heads into that braking zone with about 70% in his battery at the moment. So I wonder if these two are going to think about a swap, think about any sort of team orders, because Suso's now dropped off the back of Asakome. And you'd imagine if Isma had free air on those hard tyres, he might be able to go a tiny bit quicker than he is at the moment. Yeah,
and he's run out of ERS again. So, maybe not here, because it's a very short straight, relatively speaking, compared to other ones in Formula 1. So unless the driver in front makes an absolute hash of the final exit, the final corner at the end of the lap, don't often see too many DRS overtakes. However, end of Sector 1, the build-up for the Mistral Straight, given Suso's lack of ERS, he's going to be really struggling to hold his teammate behind. And I think, if they're in communication, I think they should make the swap right now, because it's just going to hurt both of their races, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's coming whether Suso likes it or not at the moment. Isma with the DRS, one of the most straightforward overtakes you're ever going to see at this circuit. Well before the braking zone, he manages to take that 3rd position off his teammate. Now he's got to see if he can get onto the back of Asakome and maybe start making some more moves up the field, the young Spaniard. If we look at the position changes in this race, he's gained 12 at the moment. Hughes, the biggest winner, gaining 15 places. Duncan here around the outside off the circuit. Surely that's not going to stand, and he has to go back behind Suso, but he might be able to cut down the inside into turn 11. This is going to be very close through the exit. Now can he try it into turn 12? Suso looks like he's really struggling at this moment in time.
Oh, wheel banging there, but yeah, lack of ERS and lack of grip in those mediums. I think the mediums are, they're not near the window where they're sort of going to be a problem in terms of wear, but in terms of their optimum performance, some of the drivers in the top 8 are beginning to struggle on those mediums. And yeah, fair enough. And Duncan, he didn't stick the move on the outside. He was way off the track, but then he came back at him and got the move done fairly. So that's a real shame for MX, because he's now picked up a time penalty, and that could be crucial later on when they all come in later. And yeah, definitely more clouds above the track now. It's more overcast and sunny now. And Duncan, despite starting way down the order and really struggling to get off the line on those hards early on, they're looking like a really awful tire to be on as the fuel burns off and as these clouds darken. It is beginning to really look good for Duncan, especially now that his closest rival for the hards, Luke, just picks up a time penalty.
Yeah, those 3 that started on the hards, you've got Isma and Duncan in 3rd and 4th, the McLaren with a time penalty, I should say, and Casper just sort of a bit further back, qualified lower down than them. He's just on the back of this train at the moment and not able to work his way up. As Suso loses another position, this is going to get pretty ugly, I think, for him, as Isma, his teammate, trying to go all the way around the outside at turn number 11. He's got it done very early. Great move by Isma. He is up into 2nd position. He's finding some fantastic pace on these hard tyres.
Yeah, I mean, Asacombe kind of braked a little bit earlier for the last part of that right-hander, and he was just kind of caught off guard. MX just went around him as if he wasn't even there. I mean, that was a unusually simple overtake for that part of the track. Usually it's a very difficult part of the track, but yeah, the rain is definitely coming very, very soon. It has suddenly got very dark. I'd be shocked if we don't see rain within the next three laps or so, because it looks in that kind of window. We'll get that little weird flash of light. It's almost like lightning when the rain suddenly appears on the screen.
Yeah, you'll just see a few drops starting to come. It doesn't look too bad as they're heading down the pit straight, but I know definitely heading down the Mistral straight between turns 9 and 10. The rain was looking very dark indeed, so the clouds were looking dark, I should say. So I don't think it will be too far away from starting to get some rain. We are pretty much at the halfway point of this race, like 14 out of 27. Joost is leading, Isma 2nd, Asacombe in 3rd place, but the leader out of those that have been into the pits is CRG Blizzard, 8 tenths ahead of his teammates at the moment. Fede, Shizuokiano, Jordan, Daneko, Georges and Fusilo not too far behind him. When is this rain going to come, and how heavy is it going to be? Because we have got a forecast for storm conditions, but that could just be coming a bit too late for these drivers, which I'm sure would absolutely delight them, that they don't want to get full storm conditions. As Casper down the inside of Xander at the exit of turn 11. I swear I've seen more moves into that corner than I've normally seen in pretty much every other race combined I've done around this circuit, but they're making them work. Casper gets himself up into 7th.
Yeah, I mean, Casper not in quite as good a position as Duncan. He's been kind of stuck in traffic a little bit, although given Suso's struggles, it's going to be I think another position gain, so it's looking good for Mercedes at the moment. Yeah, here comes Casper again, running out of ERS. It's the worst feeling when you mismanage the ERS and then you suddenly realise, oh no, I've not done this right at all, because then every time you battle on these sort of high throttle tracks like this, you don't have anything to defend with, even if you've got DRS of someone in front of you. You just get overtaken time and time again. That's what's happening, Suso. And here it comes. I just saw that telltale sort of weird graphical glitch when the rain starts, and here comes the rain. But let's see how hard it's going to be. We've still got plenty of laps to come, but the drops have started to nestle here in France.
Yeah, and I tell you what tyres I wouldn't like to be on as Asacombe gets passed by Duncan, who's up into 3rd place. I would not want to be on 14-lap-old mediums roundabout now. They're going to feel like ice no matter how little rain starts falling around this circuit. So this could be a chance for Isma and Duncan, Casper as well, and those that have come into the pits to try and find some positions and find some time. But look at Blizzard, he's 17 seconds off of Joost at this moment in time. If we compare their last laps, it was a 131.5 for Joost. It was only a 131.2 for Blizzard. He's only gaining 3 tenths of a second. He's really got to hope that this rain doesn't rain that hard and that Joost has to come in for another pit stop. Otherwise, Blizzard at midnight, they might have started 1-2. They're definitely not going to finish there.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen some races in the past where it has rained, but then nothing's happened. Oh, Xander's pitted. So is Xander Xander's obviously hoping that the DRS is disabled straight away. If it isn't, then this is a horrendous decision from the reigning F2 champion. Inters it is, so it's you know, it's not. I mean, that is a gamble for sure to come in that early, because it's not really much standing water. But as we've seen in other tiers, the rain does come very quickly at France on this game. So yeah, he'll be hoping for a similar situation here, because if it isn't, then you know, always go by the DRS disabling. That's always a telltale sign. There's been contact. Oh, if Bede has he made contact with his own teammate? Yeah, it looks like he's made well, not teammate, but in terms of being in the same slot. I think the two OP drivers came into contact outside of turn 1.
If that was the case, it looks like Dan Urko might have been an innocent victim in that, because he's dropped down in all of that as well. So those starting to find themselves in trouble. Georges has also gone for the intermediate tyres, and it's always very brave to try and predict what the weather's going to do. I mean, it does look like it's raining quite hard from that camera angle, but I remember Pierre Gasly in 2018 putting full wets on at Hockenheim and just burning through them. Raikkonen doing the same thing in 2009 at Malaysia. Just kind of got to be on the right tyres for the conditions, and as of this moment, seeing as DRS is still enabled, you've got to say the right tyres might be the hard ones, well, the hard tyres, or perhaps the dry, slick mediums, as Joost comes into the pits off those mediums at the end of lap 16 into the pits. Now we're seeing this hard tyre strategy come through, because Isma, Duncan and Casper could just go on that tiny bit longer.
Exactly, yeah. Definitely a tiny little bit of standing water, but not enough yet. I think, Midnight pits and kits up a 5-second time penalty. Blizzard has carried on. He's hoping that the DRS is not disabled for another lap, and if it isn't, Blizzard is going to play himself beautifully back into this. Jordan has carried on as well. I guess they've got nothing to lose, because at worst they're going to lose maybe half a lap being on the wrong tyres. So either way, they were not going to be challenging the lead unless they tried this. So massive slide on the back from Jordan out of turn 1. So yeah, Midnight, unfortunately, that time penalty, which he will not be able to, you know, serve straight away. He'll get it at the end of the race. Yeah, that's a slam dunk. You can't get that removed unless someone shoved you in the back, which, you know, could have happened, but I didn't see it. But yeah, time penalty of Midnight, that may have just cost him the win right there. So now the big question is, Luke, DRS has still not been disabled. Blizzard has carried on. Jordan has carried on. So for Casper and Duncan, they can still keep going, as can MX. So at the moment, it looks like the battle for the lead is going to be between MX, Duncan and Casper, because Blizzard and Jordan are still a long way behind on the same tyre.
But Joost, I went on board with him as we were coming through the first sector point. He was about 20 seconds behind. He's now 19.4 behind, and there comes the message from race control. DRS has been disabled, and Joost might have just called this absolutely fantastically on his intermediate tyres. Jack Eater sails past Dan Urko, as this track is starting to resemble a bit more of a lake at the moment. We are starting to see a bit of standing water offline. Everyone who's on the slick tyres is going to have to come into the pits. Jordan's basically being pushed around turn number 12 by his VSR stablemate. Joost just flies past him on the traction. It is definitely now wet enough for the intermediate tyres. Blizzard comes into the pits from 5th position. Where will he be? Fusilo gets a penalty as well. Casper's stayed on one more lap, and that's because of a double stack, but surely he's going to lose more time sticking out on what is clearly a wet track.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that exact same thing. I really don't understand why he decided to stay out, unless there is some sort of known glitch with that. But yeah, Casper he's going to drop out of the points more than likely. So Juice in the net lead with a massive advantage, 5 seconds to MX. So his works out incredibly well. Well, Juice got some overtakes done in his first stint to get to the front of that queue and just pulled away. So he's done really well. Blizzard has ended up just ahead of his teammate again, but 5.6 seconds behind Xander. So Blizzard is going to be P8 once Casper pits, because Casper's going to lose so much time. He's definitely going to drop behind Blizzard at Midnight for sure. I mean, he's losing a ton of time already to Juice. There's another time. Yeah, it's kind of going all wrong for Georges. That's 2 time penalties now he's picked up. So yeah, it's completely turned upside down. So fight for the podium is between MX, Duncan and Jaquita, but MX's penalty means it's Duncan and Jaquita in P2 and P3, but Juice with a glorious chance here to pick up a win. You know, he was one of the strongest drivers last season, but after the way that qualifying gone and last week, I'm not sure anyone would have predicted him winning today, but he's played this absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, if we look at the position changes, it's almost, once Casper comes into the pits anyway, it's almost a sea of who's called for strategy absolutely bang on, because all those with green arrows next to the name, you're seeing Joost, he's about to go up to 15 positions, Isma will be 13, Duncan will be 11, they've called it perfectly. You've got Jordan down 10, Danirko down 10, Blizzard, he has gone down 8 positions, but I get a funny feeling that might change to 7 by the time we see Casper come out of the pits, but that's the thing with the weather. You never know when it's quite going to come, and it's come at just the right time then for Joost. He is in the lead of this race. Casper, that one extra lap costing him so much time. He's now in 9th place. He has got slightly fresher intermediate tyres than those around him, but wouldn't really expect the intermediate tyre wear to be an issue. If the weather stays like this, there should be no more pit stops.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the weather was beyond. We knew that rain was coming, but we're not sure if it's going to be here to stay. Azicombe now getting a nice run onto the Mr. Straight. Challenging position. Duncan now right on the back of MX. I mean, this has gone completely 180 for Duncan. Had an absolute nightmare of a race last week because of that contact with Gamer. Finished out of the points, but now he's got a chance for a slam dunk. I mean, he doesn't even have to overtake MX. He's under no pressure from cars behind, but, you know, he's a racer. He'll want to earn that P2 legitimately by getting ahead of MX, and he's right on the back of him, but MX drifts really wide. Duncan's going to try and stick his nose on the inside, takes a little bit more of the curb, but MX getting on the power a little bit better. So that's a nice little battle for P2 carrying on there. Chiquita just holding off Azicombe for the time being. Suso, despite those horrendous problems to have ERS on the dry stint, is still in the top 6, so it's kind of settled down for him, and he may get a chance at P4 if these two keep squabbling ahead of him.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why Duncan wants to get a bit of a move on. He doesn't want to start letting Chiquita, Azicombe and Suso catch up to the back of him as well. But no DRS, obviously. We're seeing how tricky it can be to overtake in modern Formula 1 without any DRS, especially when a wet track is making it oh so tough to get the power down from these 1.6 litre hybrid power units. Almost a bit deja vu for Duncan. I think last season, season 28, he managed to make a late move past one of the McLaren cars, past Wilson, to get into 2nd place towards the end of the race, and he might be in a similar situation here. Not, though, against championship rivals. Still very early days. We're not sure what the championship battle is going to look like, but it's pretty much turning on its head at this moment in time. Blizzard, he's just going to try and keep his head now. He's experienced, he's got slightly fresher intermediates and some of those ahead of them. Try not to get a penalty. If some of those ahead of you do pick up the penalty, you might still gain an extra place or two.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly lapping faster than Xander ahead. I think it was about 4/10 quicker than Xander last time, but he may run out of laps weekend. So here comes Duncan again. A bit more pace. Oh, he's going to try and stick it on the inside. They're so close. I mean, that is beautiful spacing from both drivers. No contact whatsoever. They couldn't have had any less room to work with. And Duncan, that was a beautiful move. No DRS, don't forget. And, you know, ERS less effective in the rain. So that was superb racing from both. MX, fair enough to him. He had the time penalty, didn't fight it too hard, but still made it difficult enough for Duncan that he had to make a good move. But Duncan up to P2, but a massive 6.3 seconds behind Joost.
Yeah, fantastic job there from Duncan. Gets that move done, and you can see, wow, because Chiquita and Azicombe were starting to just close in. Other than those battles, it is looking fairly spread out at the moment. The other half of Fusilo is having a bit of pressure from Jordan at this moment in time. Jordan not quite out of it for the points yet. Midnight with a penalty, Fusilo with a penalty, and Shizuo Giano has that penalty from last week as well. So still a slight possibility for Jordan, if he can find a bit of pace, that he might still be able to sneak a point from what was looking like a very good reserve performance. But like the Alpha Tauris, like so many of the cars that started on the soft tyres, they have been caught out by these wet conditions. Doesn't look to really be getting too much heavier at the moment. With 7 laps to go, we know it might get heavier. Storm conditions were forecast for 45 minutes, but that is pretty much beyond the end of this race if it was dry all the way through. So we might just start getting ridiculously heavy rain right at the end, as Jordan all over the back of Fusilo, just not able to find a way through at this moment in time. And as you can see from the timing tab on the left hand side, Duncan, that's how much it was being held up by Isma. He's already got that gap over a second.
I know. I mean, he's rapidly... I mean, at this pace, he could have half a chance. If Juice makes any sort of major mistakes late on, then he could have half a chance of winning this race, which would be a remarkable turnaround from last week. Blizzard is rapidly catching up Xander. Xander struggling in these conditions. Blizzard has won many wet races in this tier in the past, and of course is a master of this track. So not really that surprising to me that he's catching up. I mean, the gap was like 4.2 seconds when he came out. Now it's 2.2. I think he'll be on the back of Xander for that P7 position before the end of the race at this rate.
Yeah, definitely. He's putting in another fantastic performance, even though it's not going to be the result that he wanted. As a demonstration job, this is looking brilliant. He'll get ahead of Xander, and as I said, any penalties for those ahead could really cause him to move up a few more places, as we have got 6 laps remaining. Fusilo still holding off Jordan at this moment in time. Jakita still holding off Asakomi as well, so the Haas car's being kept very busy at this stage in the race, and that's another thing that could help Blizzard out. If these drivers start battling, if Sousa can get himself involved, that will hold them all up, and that might allow the CRG man to get himself even further up the order. Midnight in 10th place with that 5-second time penalty. We'll be counting his lucky stars at the moment that Shizuo Agiano has one from last week, because that's just saving the Thai drivers' blushes ever so slightly.
Yeah, I mean, you got to feel for Midnight. He had a superb qualifying position. He was really in the fight for the race win early on. But, you know, the way the rains come, then that time penalty, he's going to start the season, you know, one of the pre-season favourites in some people's eyes for this championship. And he's going to, more than likely, the way it stands, starting the first 2 rounds of the season with no points. And that is desperately disappointing for Midnight. He would not have wanted to start the season like that.
No, certainly not. Talking of points, fastest lap at the moment is VRT George's, and barring an absolute miracle, he's not going to be getting into the points, so no one will be picking up that extra 1 bonus point, as Jordan still on the back of Fusilo, still can't find a way through. Those 1 lap fresher intermediates, not really, as you wouldn't expect them to do, not really creating any major differences in the pace. Blizzard, he's caught up another second onto the back of Xander. He is absolutely flying this time around. I mean, last lap, we have a look here, for VSR used, it was a 1:39.325 for our race leader. Blizzard's doing a 1:38.6 here, 7 tenths faster than the race leader. He's definitely not given up on getting a fantastic result here.
No, I mean, he's going to be praying that the likes of Suzu, Atsuko and Jakito have some sort of coming together or something that slowed them down. But yeah, Xander, you know, the reigning F2 champion, very impressive so far in PSG F1. He's on for another point score today to make it 2 from 2. But now he's got one of the best PSG F1 drivers in the history of PSGL right behind him. You know, double champion, a master of this track, and it's going to be an extremely difficult task given his ERS level to hold him off. But you know, in terms of his race, Xander might be thinking, well, I'm in a good point scoring position. Blizzard gets a massive squirm on the wheel as he gets back onto the power to chase down. So I think we're going to stick with this battle because this could get rather tasty.
Yeah, you can see Xander not able to take his tighter line coming through turn number 10 there, and Blizzard almost going into the back of him as they come into the braking zone into 11. Can he get down the inside of the second part? Tiny bit of contact between the two of them. Thankfully, it doesn't spin Blizzard round, as we see happen oh so often on this game and its predecessors. Now, can you get a better exit out of turn 12? All about the traction out of that corner, but he stays behind for now. This will make it harder for Blizzard to gain any more places, and also might get Midnight and Shizuo Agiano perhaps into the action. Now Xander I should say, trying to accelerate out the corner. Blizzard as well. Xander straight away trying to go defensive, break the toe here. No DRS, ERS only. Xander survives for another day, but it's definitely starting to look like when rather than if the junior team manages to get past the senior team up ahead of him. Xander and Blizzard battling still for 7th and 8th place. Asakomi is still stuck behind Jakita for 4th place, and as things stand, Jakita would just sneak himself onto the podium, although Asakomi this time is really close to the back of the Haas car.
He really is. Oh my, he's got to be brave on the brakes. He's tantalizingly almost side by side. He's got to be brave on the brakes. No, he backs off. Probably the wise decision, but here comes Blizzard now. Unlike that battle, already alongside, straight past Xander, just had better power coming out of the end of sector 1 onto the Mistral Straight, and it was a relatively simple overtake. 4.2 seconds. I think he's going to run out of laps before he can catch anyone else, unless they get time penalties, of course. But yeah, I just feel like Azakome had a chance there. I think if he'd been a bit more aggressive, I think he could have got that done. Oh, and a snap of oversteer from Jakita, and Azicombe had it as well moments later, and that saved Jakita, because I think if Azicombe hadn't almost had a snap himself in sympathy, he would have got ahead. So this is all playing into the hands of MX. It's giving him half an opportunity maybe to still get onto that podium, but he does have that I'm not sure what the 3-second time penalty it is for him, so he's now 3 seconds ahead of Jakita again, so MX still on for a podium as it stands.
Yeah, and I think that's that battling as well had also helped, and Azicombe just sort of, he saw the possible podium there, lit up the rear tyres, like you said, in sympathy to Jakita, and that has cost him a possible podium and maybe even a chance at 4th position as well, because Jakita's just got away. Suso's trying to close up to the back of these drivers. Casper's now in 9th position, trying to see if he can get ahead of Xander. You might notice we've not talked about the leaders for a while because they're just nice and steady up at the front of this race. Yost still ahead, 4.1 seconds ahead of Duncan, who himself is 2.6 seconds ahead of Isma. Got to say, Yost has called this absolutely perfectly so far. Seems to have been the only one who started on those mediums who was able to get enough life out of them that he had that big enough gap against the hard runners ahead of Duncan and Isma, and he's just enjoyed free traffic and free air ever since he went on to the Inters.
Absolutely. Both of them have, I believe, one warning each, so they're not at risk of a time penalty at the moment. Duncan has a penalty on the first lap, a warning, but I think that's not a track extension warning. I think that was for a minor collision, so I think he's only got one track extension warning, so both one for them. Azicombe again right on the back of Jakita, but yeah, I think MX is safe now for this podium as long as he doesn't make a mistake, as Casper comfortably gets ahead of Xander. Xander's kind of running out of steam. Maybe how hard this race has been, it's kind of the mental stamina is kind of disappearing, you know, relatively, well, very inexperienced I should say in this tier, so this will be a good learning curve for him. He's going to have Midnight behind him, but you know, hopefully Xander can hold on for that final championship point, because I think Midnight is going to be getting ahead of him very shortly. But the main battle really is for P4 right now. Azicombe still trying to get ahead of this Haas. In real life, this would be a no contest, but this isn't real life. This is PSGL, equal performance, and Azicombe's got to maybe be a little bit more aggressive, but without costing him too much time and position. Yeah,
we've seen from Casper and Blizzard that you can get overtakes done in these tricky, wet conditions. We saw Duncan do it to Isma earlier, and these have now really, unless Isma gets a penalty, they've lost any chance of getting onto that podium. They're now 4.2 seconds behind, and Suso, he's only 1 second back. Blizzard's only 2 seconds back from him. He's really gaining a lot of time in this final part of this race. And again, Azicombe just not getting a good enough exit out of turn 7 and 8 to try and get this position done. Can he keep it nice and clean through the chicane? Can he do anything? Can he use that last little bit of ERS as George has picked up another time penalty here, and he's just not quite closing in enough. Down the inside into turn 11, always tricky in the dry, almost impossible in these conditions as Jordan picks up a time penalty. He's a long way behind Shizuo Ogiano. Jordan and Xander just haven't looked to have that same pace in these intermediate conditions that they did earlier on in the dry.
No, not at all. But you know, it is half the game being good in the dry and half in the wet. And you know, there are some drivers who are extremely proficient in the dry, but then when the rain comes down, as we see in real motorsport, it just affects them badly. They just don't have that same read of the track as they do in the dry.
Yeah, certainly. Setups as well, also another thing that might change things. We are on to the final lap of this race as Georges has had a moment. That is coming, I believe that is coming out of turn 12. Light tap on the wall. Doesn't look to be any real visible damage, though, to that Alfa Romeo after a high of a podium last time out. But brought back down to earth for the former F2 reserve driver now, Azicombe. He's got one last opportunity, you'd feel, to get ahead of Jack Eater. The disconnected car of Mish is still running out there on circuit as George has now retires from this race, and Azicombe gets a little bit of a slide on through 6 and 7. That could well be that for that position, but further back, Blizzard's only half a second behind Suso.
I know. Blizzard's pace has been unbelievable. I mean, you know, the leaders will be grateful that Blizzard's nowhere near them because he is lapping so much quicker. I think he's got a chance to get ahead of Suso and maybe more if the two ahead have a bit of a moment sector 3. But, you know, Juiced, he's dropping big time to Duncan, but it's not going to matter because he's got no time penalties. And Yeah, he is entering the final few corners in a few moments. But yeah, let's see what Blizzard can do. Right behind him, we saw him take a position when Xander slipped wide. Got to try it, but no, I think we're going to have to pick up Juice because he's rounding the final corner right now.
Yeah, Joost heading towards the final corner. Then it was an ideal start to the season. Last time around, lighting up the Vias through the final corner. Joost takes the checkered flag then here to win the French Grand Prix. Duncan will come home in second place. Blizzard sent it down the inside on Suso at the final corner. That sent the McLaren wide. He's not going to be happy about that whatsoever. Isma gets a podium. Jack Eater just holds off Asacone. Blizzard comes home in sixth position, 1.5 tenths ahead of Suso. Casper gets some points in eighth after just going that little bit too long on the D set of hard tyres. Xander crosses the line ninth. Shizuo Giano 10th on the game, but he does have that 5-second penalty from last week, so Midnight will just, by about 2 tenths of a second, pick up the final point. Other finishers there, Jordan, Fusilo, Fede, Daneko and Mish, of course, who disconnected. A fantastic end to the race there. Plenty of action and plenty of racing. Hughes given the in-game driver of the day, and he definitely was perhaps the smartest driver with the strategy. He takes his first win of the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very interesting celebration from Juice there on the podium. But yeah, I mean, it played out beautifully for those outside top 10 the way the rain happened. But Juice, he was the best of those outside the top 10. Made some really important moves early on, long before the rain came. And then when he pitted, he had a huge gap. So even though he had a massive pace disadvantage, the likes of Duncan, he was able to have a comfortable gap at the end and takes a win which really ignites his season. I mean, he didn't score anything at Bahrain this time, maximum points. A VSR and Dutch 1-2. CRG taking a 1-2 last season. So we suspected that VSR and CRG would have a bit of a war over the race wins all through the season. And that is exactly what's been going on so far.
Yeah, having a monopoly on the, well, a duopoly, I should say, on the first two places. Used his first, Duncan in second. Isma gets his first top tier podium in third place. Despite that penalty, Jack Eaton just holds off his countryman for fourth position. Asacone was fifth. Blizzard, that move on the final lap. So much pace in the dry and in the wet, you've got to say. Just got it slightly wrong with the strategy. He comes home in sixth. Suso with seventh. Casper eighth. Xander ninth. Shizuo Giano will drop behind Midnight, who will pick up the final points position. Ogiano will come home in 11th. Jordan 12th. Daneko is 13th. Fusilo 14th. Fede 15th after pitting earlier on onto the medium tyres, trying to get that undercut. Didn't quite work out for either of them. Mish was disconnected. What could he have done? Having started in 11th place, it's probably the ideal place to start in this race. Georges gets the fastest lap, retired at the end of the race, so no points for him. And Will and Christmas were the only official retirements in what was a very interesting French Grand Prix. On-track action, perhaps not as much in the end as you sometimes expect in the wet conditions, but a brilliant job from Hughes. Called for strategy absolutely fantastically. Just kept those mediums alive long enough to stretch it out until the track was definitely ready for the intermediates.
Yeah, I mean, you just look. You can probably look at the results screen and kind of tell what happened, just from the massive, swap arounds on the grid. P16, P17, P19, getting all the way up into the top 10 like that. So you got to feel a little bit for Blizzard at Midnight because they had a fantastic qualifying session, locking out the front of the grids. But yeah, the strategy just went against them today. And, Blizzard showed incredible pace in the rain, but he just ran out of laps. He just couldn't get anywhere near them. It's a long piss stop at France. And yeah, it was just too much even for someone like that. I think if it had been a dry race, I think it's highly likely that Blizzard would have won that race with the pace he had today. But I believe he's still going to be leading the championship by a few points. And he got some valuable points today. I mean, he did dive down the inside. I mean, it looked borderline. Not sure whether the other driver will bother putting it in the stewards, but some drivers might. But I think it looks just about okay to me.
Yeah, definitely. It was the gap was definitely there, and you do see that on the final lap of the race. I think any other lap drivers will be thinking, why on earth are you going for that move? But on the final lap, it seems a bit more forgiving. The pace that he's shown, though, I don't think he'll be too worried about the way that race went. And he is still in the lead of the championship because Joost and Duncan, obviously the top two, didn't score many points last time around.
No, and I think in a way that's healthy for the championship. We've had, two different race winners. I think actually an entirely different podium this week as well. 6 different drivers on the podium from 2 races. I mean, you bite your hand off for that as a commentator going into pre-season. And of course, we've got some Belgium and the Netherlands coming up in the next 2 rounds. But I think some of the drivers, particularly those towards the front, they'll be hoping for a little bit less unpredictability in terms of the weather. Just hearing that one of the drivers isn't going to make the interview, that's P3 MX. So congratulations to him in advance. We're just waiting for Juice and Duncan, and we will get started with those interviews. So I think we're just waiting on them. So I guess Luke, you just have some sort of further thoughts as I head to get the interview started.
Yeah, just thought I'd quickly, before we do get Duncan and Joost in to celebrate their, first for Joost, second for Duncan, just a quick run over the championship. Blizzard now on 21 points, Joost second on 16, Isma is third on actually, it'll be Duncan will be third on 12 points, Gamer will be fourth on 12 points, and Isma is fifth on 12 points. So it's still looking very close at the moment, as I do believe we have got Duncan and Joost waiting for the interviews. So first of all, we're going to get, of course, our who should we start off with? Our race winner or the man who finished in second place?
Well, they're waiting. Not sure what they're waiting for. They need to actually join us, unless we need to switch to them.
Yeah, well, first of all, we'll bring in the man then who has claimed fantastic victory today from a long way down on the grid. Got it absolutely right with a strategy. It is VSR Joost. Mark, take it away.
Yeah, well, welcome to the post-race interviews for the PSGL F1 French Grand Prix. We are joined by the race winner representing Red Bull Racing and VSR, Joost. Incredible turnaround from last week. No points at Bahrain, the maximum points today. The strategy played out beautifully for you tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I always scored 0 points in the first race of the season, but this time, I fucked up quali. I want to go for P11 for the mediums because it was gonna rain in lap 18, 17. So I thought I will take the risk and go on the mediums, but I ended P16, so that was pretty bad. Then I drove a really good first stint on the mediums. I got to the first runner and then I created a gap to Ismix, I think. And then the rain comes, and I thought I have to go in, otherwise I will get held by the whole train behind me. So I was taking the risk to go 1 lap earlier, and I think that was the perfect moment to pit.
So are you in communication with your teammate Xander? Because Xander came in a little bit earlier, and it was obviously a bit too early for him because he lost quite a bit of time. Did he sort of give you an indication what the conditions were, which kind of helped you make that decision?
Yeah. We were in a party with engineer, and Sander says on the end of my lap, go in. So I was going, and then but I didn't test my setup in the rain, and I knew Dunk was fast in the rain, so I was hoping the setup was pretty planted in the rain, but I had oversteer and understeer everywhere, so I was fighting to get good pace.
Well, you must have been a little bit apprehensive as Duncan was rapidly coming against you, but did you ever sort of think he was going to catch you, or were you sort of confident that the laps were going to run out?
I was pretty confident because the gap was pretty big in the beginning, and I wasn't taking the risk because I knew he was coming and didn't want to get a penalty or something, so I was driving clean.
Early days, of course, for you, Juiced. Top 3 in the championship last season. This win puts you into early title contention. And then you've got the likes of Belgium and the Netherlands coming up. Do you think you can sort of put yourself into the fight for the championship?
Yeah, I think so. I think Belgium is a pretty good track for me, and Zandvoort as well.
Yes, Belgium, of course, one of those legendary tracks. But if you sort of had a target for the upcoming races, would it be to improve your qualifying? Because you seem to have a good race pace at Bahrain, despite some of the issues you had there, and obviously today you had some really good pace, particularly on the medium. So do you think qualifying is kind of the thing you're going to aim to improve in the races going forward?
I think my qualifying is pretty good. I did a pretty good in practice. I was pretty fast in qualifying, did pretty good laps. But then I saw the rain at the end of the race, so I thought softs is not the best way to go. So I want to go for P11, but I made a mistake to go on mediums and do a lap with that.
Well, again, massive congratulations to you, Juiced. And you'll be certainly one of those contenders. So we're going to call in VSR
Thanks.
Duncan, the championship runner-up from last season, who like Juice had a very difficult race in Bahrain, but struck back in fine fashion to get P2 today. So Duncan, great race for you today. I mean, it all worked out very well for you early on. Hards from the start of the race along with your teammate Casper, and that really put you into play with the rain coming fairly late on. So, was qualifying as low down as you did and onto the hards, was that completely dictated by what the weather was going to be? Not sure if you're muted, Duncan. I can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah, apologies. We do seem to have a few issues getting hold of Duncan, but yeah, great performance. Obviously, we'll just talk about the performance of Use, as he was saying. He seemed fairly relaxed with how that went, and pretty clear that straight away he was thinking, right, softs aren't going to last in this race. I'm going to have to start on the mediums, wait until the rain comes, and then I might have a chance. And he played it brilliantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that literally was a coin toss in a way when that sort of scenario plays out, but it worked out beautifully for those outside the top 10. I mean, obviously we do get those rare occasions where it rains, but it doesn't quite rain enough for, to actually put into Zon, and that could have swung it back in favor of Blizzard, etc., and those who had to pit early on the softs. But it's certainly gonna offer some interesting lessons for some of the other drivers going forward. But yeah, we're going to try and get Duncan in here for a few words. MX, as I mentioned, was not able to make the interview. He had to dash off straight away. And Duncan is back in the chat. Duncan, can you hear us? I think we'll try one more time. And if not, I think we may need to call it one, Luke, on this one. We'll give him another 20 seconds or so.
I think it's pretty clear. If Duncan can hear us, unfortunately, we can't hear him. Duncan, is everything okay?
It may be some sort of output issue, unfortunately. So I think we're gonna have to give up on that one, unfortunately, Luke. So that was your interview for the PSGL F1 French Grand Prix. Hopefully we'll have a few less technical issues next time at Spa.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to hear from more. Congratulations again to Use for taking that victory, and then Duncan on a second place. Isberg getting his first podium in the top tier, and I learned a lot from the first race, which drivers were able to hit the ground running. France, again, Blizzard looked very quick in the dry conditions and in the wet, just perhaps getting the strategy a tiny bit wrong. And Belgium, we're looking at the next few races, looking at the entire calendar now. Belgium, Netherlands, Italy, Britain, Austria, all circuits where we could see that wet weather come again. So wouldn't surprise me if there's a few more races where strategy is oh so important this season.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, Belgium is one of those nailed on one-stop races in the dry, soft, the combination of soft and medium. So it's probably the first race of the season really where tyre wear's not going to be an issue whatsoever. And I think the alternate strategy is not often that powerful at Belgium for that very reason, because the tyre wear it's not really an issue. The pace of the softs and mediums isn't going to change that much, but there's always going to be some people trying outside the top 10 to try and do it. But I think the value of Belgium, particularly the characteristics of it being such a high-speed circuit, over 70% of the lap is taken fourth. I think you'll want to qualify as high up as possible for that one if it's a full dry race.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic race, no matter what the weather is at Belgium. And if you do want to not wait a whole week for some Belgian Grand Prix action, well, luckily for you, the PC tiers will have you covered. Tiers 2 and 3 will be streamed on a Wednesday. Tier 3 at 7 o'clock. Tier 2 from 8 p.m. before George Morgan and Jack Cadan take you through the top tier action on Thursday. Full qualifying, of course, starting at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. 7 p.m. is also when you have F13 racing in the PlayStation side. 8 p.m. for F12. Then the middle tiers racing on a Sunday. Top tiers racing on a Monday. Culminating with myself and Mark taking you through the action at Belgium at 8 p.m. Once again, thank you so much for the drivers. Well, you for joining us for the intro. Apologies that we couldn't get hold of Duncan and Isma. I think Isma was actually getting food, and who can blame him for that? The race probably went on a tiny bit longer than he would have expected, and Duncan with the technical issues. Thank you once again for Mark for joining me, and thank you again so much for you guys for joining us. Really appreciate your comments throughout the race, and we will see you in a week at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps from the Belgian Grand Prix. But for myself and Mark, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.